Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are well, as always. Nice to see you. Got lots to talk about this week. There's been lots happening, lots of it bad, nothing good I can think of. Stuff that we should be concerned about, things that we really need to discuss. So let's get the guys in right away. Let's start with our favourite lawyer, or one of our favourite people, whatever. Eva, how are you, my friend?
I'm in good nick, thank you, Roddy, but I've been worried about Scotland for a while, and this week I'm also worried about the United Kingdom because, as you said, there doesn't seem to be much good happening this week. It all seems to be pretty bad stuff, and that's a really terrible reflection on a country which was once arguably great.
Yeah, well, I would argue. And over there, and we've got our favourite weatherman, or as he was referred to earlier, the weather boy, which I thought was stretching it a bit, Mr. Quinnan.
Yes, that was that cheered me up no end, I can assure you.
Yeah, I've got a cheek barhead boy, you know what I mean? I've really got a cheek. I have a cheek, whatever. And over there, now where he's far travelled, our Mr. Boswell is in where today, Mr. Boswell?
A far, far place to go. So Fargo, far away. Doing a Shrek impersonation in my luminous green, obviously, but it's a running shot. I don't know what's doing on me. I don't do much running, but there you go. Having fun in Fargo, I have to say, it's a great place. Lovely, lovely people. Really, the Americans of the Midwest are probably the best.
We'll take your word for it. Hello, I have met your friend from the Midwest. Very lovely lady, lovely person. But an enjoyable time here when you were over visiting.
Cracking.
And you paid for it all yourself. You paid your own flights. You paid for everything. You, in fact, paid dinners. Because that's not what's happening in the UK. And I'd like to do a declaration right here and now. I've got new glasses, folks. You see them? You know, the whites. Very nice. And I didn't buy them myself. I found a sponsor for them who bought them for me, my wife. But, you know, I accepted a gift. I've also changed my name by deed poll. I'm now England MacLeod is my name. Because recently we got in solar panels, which my wife paid for. And because I didn't have any ready cash because I'm poor and I'm on a British pension. And we bought these solar panels, which means I've now got free electricity. And when there's the excess, it goes to the electricity company and then they pay money, but it's going into my account, not my wife's bank account. So she pays for the electricity, she pays for the solar panels, but I get the profit. So I thought I should change my name to England. Because that's exactly what they're doing with our electricity. They're getting it for nothing and making a profit. So there you go. But this is the week, Eva, where people have been trying to justify receiving freebie gifts. I mean, I don't know where to start. We've got Keir's accommodation for his sons as good a place as anywhere to start. Now, there's a lot of, on this. But he's living he got moved to a flat, and the story we've got is 20 grand a week, folks, for this flat, £20,000 a week to rent it in London because he needed to study for his exams. Every kid in the United Kingdom should get a 20 grand a week flat to study in. It's quite disgusting, isn't it? And it's also a wee bit iffy.
Like you, Roddy, I genuinely do not know where to begin. I mean, no disrespect and no harm and no shame to any child of a politician. So that must be made very clear at the outset. However, it is understood that Sir Keir Starmer is worth in excess of £7 million. It is also understood that when he fought to become the Prime Minister and spoke about his manifesto for change, that he was genuine, that change was exactly what he and his party desired to deliver. Were that the truth, were that a genuine objective of his, he may very well have been right in accepting hospitality to keep his son away from noise or paparazzi, journalists, disturbance, unwelcome intrusions, whatever it might be. But there was an easy way to do that, which would have not created the negative perceptions that this has. The easy way was that he could have hired, rented a hotel or a holiday home for his son and his wife and his daughter to stay in over the relevant period to keep them out of the spotlight. Alternatively, he could have given to charity a donation of an equivalent amount to that benefit in kind that he and his family received. As far as I am aware, he attempted to do and did neither of those. In my book, that suggests very, very strongly that change is not what is going to occur with him. He appears to have been happy to accept whatever emoluments, benefits, privileges, or perks he could and use them to great advantage. And unfortunately, his excuse has been his children. He's put his son in front of him in the context of what he was doing and what his justification was. And you know, it's not so long ago that the Labour Party in Scotland, along with other unionist objectors, were blaming Michael Matheson of the SNP for something pretty similar relative to the iPad carry-on that he had. So you can't have one rule for one and a different rule for somebody else. If Keir Starmer was going to be the upstanding, upright, absolute shining pillar of propriety, he ought not to have accepted these gifts in the first place. But if he did feel it was appropriate to accept them, he should and could have made an equivalent donation to some good cause, some just cause, to make up for the benefit that he'd received. But that's only the start of it. That's only the very, very tip of the iceberg. Because if you look further beyond that, what you understand is that there will have been innumerable children the same age of his boy trying to study and sit exams in very difficult, traumatic circumstances, and circumstances of family poverty or care experience or homelessness, or trying to study and better themselves without an iPad, without the wherewithal, perhaps trying to go to a local library only to learn that it was shut, trying to get extra tuition from teachers who didn't exist. You know, the comparisons and the contrasts are endless. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it looks like this young lad has been stuck out in front of his dad to provide a justification that doesn't exist. And if it does, it means that the Labour Party, who were going to provide all that was necessary for all of us at our time of need at no cost, have turned into a party who provides privileges for those and such of those, and they are again the haves and the have-nots. So that slightly deals with the penthouse flat and his son's education. It doesn't even begin to consider underwear for his wife, designer clothes for himself and his colleagues, spectacles, penthouse trips, to New York. We've seen somebody else got a loan of £1.2 million for a house. The list is endless, and it is not representing the change that the UK was promised.
No. I played the video last week, Lloyd, of Starmer being so sincere, and he was going to clean up politics, and bungs and corruption had to stop. But I mean, we know, as Eve has alluded to, he gets 76 grand for clothing for him and his wife. He got 100 grand. He's got 100 grand a year box at the Emirates Stadium for Arsenal. Why didn't he send his son there? I mean, there's no games Monday to Saturday. He could have been in the box. Surely he could have done a deal with Arsenal and they could have gone down there and studied in perfect peace and quiet.
I don't know what you're all getting so upset about. Everything was done within the rules. We've been told these are the rules that the members of the House of Commons have made for themselves so that they can plunder the country. Right? Now, if that's the rules, you have to go along with it. Don't we agree that we should live in a world where there's a rules-based order? This is what these people are hiding behind a set of regulations that they wrote for themselves to benefit themselves and exclude everybody else in the country. It's absolutely disgusting after this period of time to see so-called members of the People's Party, the Labour Party, actually hiding behind rules that they know were cobbled together by the Tories, and they see that as a true defence. They genuinely say, we have not done anything wrong, it's in the rules. So it's perfectly all right for Angela Rayner to employ a photographer on £68,000 a year, right? So if I want a photographer, should I get a photographer? Then there's the way that they manipulate, and this is the real nub of the matter, the way they manipulate the rules so that it can suit them. I can't remember their name at the moment because they're all so bloody forgettable, and hopefully they will be forgotten about in the next year or so. But one of them used £14,000 that she was given, and she put it down as office support and writing. £14,000. The £14,000 was used for her birthday party. But because it went onto the expense sheet as office support and writing, then it's within the rules. And she actually said that. She stated that. She effectively said, I manipulated the rules knowing full well what I was doing so that I could get somebody else to pay for my birthday party. Right? Now, there's a really simple thing here, and it's a simple question for all of them. In what direction does your moral compass point? Because it's not a matter of whether it is within the rules or out with the rules. In politics, an essential, central element should be, unfortunately, maybe not these days in British politics, should be a moral compass that tells you what's right and what's wrong. And any elected politician who believes that the manipulation of the rules so that they can pocket money, so that they can get themselves a nicer jacket, a better house, a holiday here, a holiday there, or indeed tickets for the football, anyone that does that has proved by doing that that they are not fit for office. It's as simple as that. We can rage as much as we like, but so long as people accept that argument, accept that debate, that I was merely working within the rules. I've heard that before in many, many different areas. You know, I was just following orders, is effectively what they're saying. But what they're doing is they are deliberately plundering the nation for their own benefit when they're already on over 3 times the national average salary in this country. It was bad enough for the Tories, but this really is, we're scraping right down the bottom of the last barrel at this stage with this Labour Party.
Yeah, it is. It's getting worse. There's a few more to come. I want to put a couple up before you come in on this one, Phil. Here's one where Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves got clothing donations, and as Lloyd alluded to, they put it down as office support. So they knew whether it was in the rules or not. They knew the optics in it were bad. They knew that it was bad and wrong, but they still did it. They took it for nothing, and they took it and they hid it. And it just shows you that it's just disgusting. Now, you were a policeman, Phil. If you had accepted from someone you were dealing with a gift of free clothes, free glasses, tickets for the football, how long would you have been a policeman, and how quick would you have been in Berlin?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and we all know the answer to that one. You've been serious bother instantly taking gifts, and as Eva said, in the legal profession, it's exactly the same. And it's the other thing is you've got to be beyond bias. You can't be seen to be biased, and even the perception of bias. You cannot, that in a position of authority, you cannot do. And here's these people taking backhanders and doing. I mean, the irony here is there are rules in business that are perfectly acceptable. There are occasions when you can actually get perks in the accounts of your. A good accountant will tell you what you can't do under your business. You play the rules and play the game. But to actually manipulate the rules, change them, and blatantly do this when they're very, very well paid people who are supposed to be doing it out of principle. Sadly, it just shows they're mostly troffers, I think, and it's been well and truly documented and named and described actually by Eva and Lloyd there. But there's one that made me think as well. A big part of it was it was in the Huffington Post. One of the ones that we haven't talked about is a guy called Lord Ali, who's been up to all sorts of shenanigans, it would seem. But anyway, a top civil servant has been asked to investigate how this Labour donor, right, was given a number 10 security pass. This is highly irregular. This is like the guy on the roof shooting Trump. Why, well, a roof a mile away, and there wasn't any inspectors on it or any snipers on it, or the Secret Service weren't checking it out. You're letting a guy, you're giving out a pass to number 10 to someone who just happens to be a big Labour donor. It's a really unusual move, and he was given the pass within days of this Labour victory on July the 4th. And so it's like, the other thing is that they're blaming all this, the Tories are doing exactly the same thing. It's like, so what? It's a change of management in the parliamentarian shop. Dodgy geezers are us, but it's business as usual, very much so. This guy Ali I was talking about, he previously donated $500,000 to Labour, right? As well as paying for tens of thousands of work clothing for the Prime Minister that was mentioned earlier. Work clothing, 16 grand or something like that. And Downing Street sources, it's well publicised, at least some of the press are reporting this. And the guy was given a pass apparently on a temporary basis, and he handed it back weeks ago. But they've also said they've no idea why the guy was given the pass in the first place. And, the John Glenn, the Shadow Paymaster General, he wrote to the Cabinet Secretary to probe who signed off on Lord Ali's pass. This guy giving him unrestricted access to number 10. Well, it's obviously a wee gift. Thank you very much for $500,000, mate. What can we do for you? Well, he's already a lord, so he's one of them, eh?
Yeah, there's a few rumours floating about, and we'll wait and see how they develop. But it's a thing, and even at all levels now, I want to say here now, we on here condemned Michael Matheson for what he did. It was absolutely wrong, and there should have been punishment. I'm saying any party, any elected official should not, or civil servant should not be accepting gifts and freebies. It just shouldn't happen. They don't do it because you're a good guy. They don't. And it's still a story. When councillors, I'll ask you this one, Phil, as well, just quickly. If you're a councillor, what's the committee you want to get on?
Well, that depends on your influence. If you like brown envelopes, for example, if you're a fan of brown envelopes, you would be going on to licensing and planning.
Exactly.
And that's where you find the wee cabals of their wee nests.
Correct. And it's got to stop. Lobbying's got to stop. Getting any kind of gift shouldn't. I go back to my days in sales where they said to us, well, we're going to have to tax your cars because it's a tax. It's a benefit in kind. So you're going to have to pay tax now on your company cars, and company cars get phased out and you end up leasing your own and things like that. But that was the thing. It was a benefit. Now, is it not a benefit in kind that he's wearing suits from Savile Row at 76 grand, that he's sitting in a free box at the Arsenal? I don't know. The seats are facing the wrong way. It should be taken as that. But here's another. It's not restricted to England. The Labour Party have always been troffers. They've been the worst. The Tories at least admit it. They don't hide. What with this guy? There you go. Anas Sarwar. Remember how he told us he was so honoured to be going to the tattoo to take the salute? Why he was asked in the first place, I don't know. I'd have given him a salute with one finger. But here, it turns out he got £5,000 worth of hospitality for him and 7 of his toadies. Why is he getting £5,000 to go to the tattoo? He's meant to be one. I don't know why the leader of the third party, whether registered in England, has been invited, but he should have been proud as a Scotsman to go there to promote the city and to promote something that was helping the country. But no, he gets £5,000 of freebies. It's quite disgusting, Eva.
Can I just quote a tweet that I actually took my hat off to this week? It's from Darren McGarvey. And he says, the idea that moguls dish out freebies expecting nothing in return is an insult to the intelligence of any reasonable person. The ancient practice of corrupting a political heart with a gift is often the first move in an attempt to ingratiate oneself with political elites. This is nothing new. Less corrupt countries have laws against it, and it is effective precisely because it feels harmless to those being lavished with attention for the first time. I think those are really significant, important words that we should remember and try to live by. Had I been Anna Sarwar, been invited to the tattoo, it would not have crossed my mind that I was enabled to take half a dozen friends with me. I would have thought the right thing to do was to make a donation to a charity to say thanks for a great night. I wouldn't have then been going on to tweet about what a privilege it was when I was actually being paid to do that performance. This is how things have just become back to front. And to put that into a context that some folk I know, particularly in Clackmannanshire, might understand. Years ago, there was a lawyer in Alloa, a fantastic guy, John Harrison. He was one of these old school gentlemen from a firm in Alloa called Wilson and Jarvis, who, what we said about him was, why we use one word when 10 will do. If you got into a chat with John, it went on for hour after hour after hour, and he told you about his gran and his granddad and the law and the folk next door and the boy that cut his hedge and whatever. But John had a very strict moral code which the Law Society of Scotland never ever had to question or police. He understood conflict of interest back to front and inside out, to the extent where his firm used to act for the cooperative, doing contracts of supply and demand and literally buying vegetables from folk and the butcher's shop and leases and buying new windows and whatever. So if you were accused of breaking the window at the cooperative in the high street in Alloa and you went to John's firm to defend you, he couldn't defend you because he did the contracts for the co-op. It wasn't a real conflict of interest, but in his heart and in his moral code, it absolutely was. And it's folk like him with that code, that compass, that's what we need in politics. No these shysters whose hands are out to collect every single last penny and benefit that they can possibly get, to the extent where you've seen the furore of folk that were trying to get tickets for various different concerts of folk that are far too young for me to understand about. But they're trying to excuse themselves by saying, yeah, but my children wanted to go. It was a great opportunity for my children. I couldn't pass up on that. But they're not thinking about the rest of the children in the United Kingdom. This is how far politics has sunk, and we can't allow it to go any further. It's why, particularly in Scotland, we've got to say enough is enough. Get out of that troughin. Our country deserves so much better. We need honesty, integrity, and we need public servants who understand if you're getting paid 68 to 160 odd grand for the public purse, you pay your own way. And if somebody offers you a freebie, you say, thanks, but no thanks, because my soul is not for sale. End of.
Correct. I should just add, folks, that also Mr. Sarwar, socialist, accepted £3,000 worth of hospitality from the Scottish Rugby Union for the Scotland-England game at Murrayfield in February. He also accepted a similar package from the Scottish Rugby, Scottish SRU, for the Calcutta Cup in 22, costing £2,000. He also accepted a ticket and hospitality for the FA with a 3-1 defeat at Hampden for £400. And another £5. I mean, it's just disgusting. I went to Germany. I paid my own flights, paid my own hotels, and paid my own tickets. None of you lot sponsored me out there. How come none of you sponsored me, give me a bung, blackmail me? No. But that's what you expect. Don't expect anyone to pay it for you. You do it. These politicians And they do live in this bubble, Lloyd, where they think, as you said it yourself, they think they're special. I'm on the television, I'm in the newspapers, I've got a column. Yes, I get invited to all the best places and don't put my hand in my pocket. But you need to take another cut in your pension. You need to pull your belt in another notch because you're the little people.
Absolutely, Roddy. I mean, I think that the worst of this really is the fact that it's become a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. For years and years, we've heard people saying, oh, they're all at it. They've all got their fingers in the till. All politicians are corrupt. And now the politicians are saying it. All of them are saying, yeah, well, everybody else is at it, so why don't I do it? Which is effectively what you're saying when you say, but it's within the rules. What you're really saying is, they did it, so I'm doing it. And I don't care what you think. That really is effectively what it is, top and bottom. Now, this attitude, this precious I am important attitude is permeated right down to council level in politics. Because a note today, for instance, there's a dispute in local government. 2 of the unions have recommended to their membership that they should support the offer that's coming from COSLA. The major union says, no, we want more negotiation. So what does COSLA, the Confederation of Scottish Local Authorities, the elected professional politicians, what does it do? It attempts the divide and conquer nonsense. So it imposes, as it did this afternoon, imposed a salary increase on all their workers while ignoring entirely the largest group of workers in unison. And this is the attitude that they've got. Their attitude is, we're in charge, you work for us, literally, as far as COSLA is concerned. But when you start to have that attitude of, I'm important, losing sight of the concept that you actually represent other people, the people that voted for you, that's who you represent. You don't represent yourself. You may have opinions, but those opinions have to be tempered by what it is that the people who elected you and gave you your job, what they want. Now, I find it absolutely incredible that here we have a mess in Downing Street, and here in Scotland, we've got 2-bit councillors deciding that they will impose a pay settlement without discussion with the largest union that they're dealing with. This level of arrogance has got to stop. And we need a complete here I go with that great word. We need a reset of why people are in politics, because for the past 10, 15 years, all I've seen since my time in Parliament is it shift further and further and further into the world of show business. And once you're down that road, then that's when you get people saying, yes, but I'm elected. Who do you think you are? Everybody's been doing it for years and years. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just doing what other people did. Mm-hmm. These are not the people we require to be looking after our civilization and our society. It's as simple as that.
No, I agree. And you're right. I have been attacked today on social media for daring to suggest that they shouldn't be doing this. And I say, whether you're in the Labour Party, the Tory Party, the SNP, Alipit, whatever party it is, you shouldn't be accepting gifts. You just shouldn't be doing it. It's just wrong. So, and I don't care if it's in the rules are wrong then. The rules are absolutely wrong. Now, I mean, there's one more. I've just got to put it up just quickly. Well, not even just, but this is it. One of you mentioned it. This woman here got a flat for 1.2 million by the same Lord Alley. It's quite, I mean, 1.2, it's not even, well, I've got a wee flat, it's lying empty, 60 grand, down in the Carlton, but you can use that for 1.2 million, let's not mess about, 20 grand a week. I mean, it's just quite incredible. But it's also the week, Phil, of the Labour Party conference, and parties usually get a bounce at their conference. It's usually a time when their ratings go up. But it's not been the case this week with the Labour Party. And it could be things like, for example, there was here it is here. This is it. The union, the trade union under the TUC, was a great speech by the lady. I don't know if you saw it, where they opposed, and the conference opposed the cut of the winter fuel payment. but it's not binding. So we know what's going to happen. They ain't, it's like when the SNP voted for a Scottish currency and Sturgeon just ignored it. This will be ignored. But the people are telling them, don't do it. But they're going to do it anyway, aren't they?
Absolutely, they'll do it because they're signed up to it. It's why they're there. They've signed up to a whole raft of policies by the same people that govern what the Tories do. It's become America, sadly, and the sad state of affairs that the American public face, having no choice. The illusion of choice, as George Carlin famously said, and it's hitting them bad. The latest opinion polls are showing the gap shrinking between the Tories and Labour already because of their performance. And it's things like this that's doing it. And on the week of a Labour conference when it normally shoots up. I mean, it's like, I guess the Tories are returning to their roots, having known that this is going to happen. They're back to their youth. But Labour are the same, so it doesn't really make a difference. I mean, half of the voters right now think Labour's done such a bad job with the dodgy donations we've talked about, all the infrastructure challenges, and the painful budget. This is really significant, the budget that's coming in. It's been told, we've been warned it's going to be painful, it's going to be difficult, belts have to be tightened, all of that garbage as austerity continues to be imposed upon us. And it'll get worse. It's going to get worse. There was a good article in the Financial Times talking about how this dip in form, even at the time of a conference, is going to kick in. And there's comparisons with when the first 10 Prime Ministers have been re-elected, and this is through Ipsos and then RSL, being measured against their approval ratings. Thatcher, Blair, Cameron, with both Thatcher and Cameron's ratings hit even lower depths in their first terms than Starmers have now, but significantly those low points came after the very painful budgets of 1981 and 2012. We're about to get another one of these perfect storms from that electoral situation. And of course, by-elections throughout UK, I mean, it's not surprising given the U-turns, the way people have turned against them. They see the U-turns that these guys are supposed left-wing leader and this party have made since gaining power. This was inevitable. And to go on to talk about the TUC, that's the difference though. It's a non-binding vote, Roddy, and at the Labour Party conference, calling the government to reverse its cuts on the winter fuel payments, and the great thing about it was passionate speeches that were made by Unite's General Secretary Sharon Graham. She said she didn't understand how the new Labour government could hit pensioners so hard while leaving the rich untouched. This is it. This is the traditional speech you would expect to raise the roof at a Labour conference. This is not what the people voted for. But, but addressing this as the subject on his conference speech on Tuesday, the Prime Minister Starmer said he understood people's concerns, but he didn't want to risk the public finances. Shyster, man. You're a complete shyster.
Yeah, he didn't. It cost 1.6 billion to give the pensioners the heating allowance, but can't afford it because we're going to crash the economy. But they can give 3 billion this year and every year forevermore to Ukraine to fight the Russians, to kill each other, to kill people, to look after pensioners in Ukraine and kill pensioners in Russia. Work that one out for me, folks. But the Labour Party were self-congratulating, and they've been on social media talking about what a great conference, and the speeches. Oh, and Annis is the new Nelson Mandela, and Keir is absolutely, I mean, John F. Kennedy, take a back seat. We're brilliant, fantastic. And then they're trying to blame anything, everything. It's in the rules. It's worse. The Tories were worse. And here's this one of our Annis. He's trying to lay the winter fuel allowance. He says, we can keep it. Well, how can we keep it, Annis? We all know about the Barnett formula and consequentials. Of course, Eva, he won't say what has to be cut because we're in a fixed budget. He won't mention what he thinks should be cut.
You're talking my language, Roddy, because in my living room, I have got a picture of Nelson Mandela. In my office, I've got one of John F. Kennedy, but I've also got one of Marlon Brando as Don Corleone. So you can kind of work out how my brain operates. And I'm watching Anna Sarwar this week and observing how the Labour Party conference unfolded. And whilst they were having their keynote speeches, there was a press release in Scotland from Shelter about homelessness in Scotland. And I'll read it to you. In total, last year, there were 16,330 households in temporary accommodation, a 9% rise on 2023. 33,619 households were assessed as homeless, and the number of children living in temporary accommodation was over 10,000. Whilst those figures are being announced, we've got Labour talking about a house building programme when all of us here remember that the last time Labour were in power in Scotland, they built half a dozen houses. The rhetoric does not match the delivery. And that's the problem with the Labour Party: overpromise, under-deliver. But it's also a problem for the Scottish independence movement because, as I bang on about every week, John Swinney needs to listen to advice from other folk about what you need to do in Scotland to make the country a better place, to start delivering for the people who require and deserve delivery of services, and get beyond the sound bites. Because the Labour Party conference was a series of sound bites. Probably most of the people who were listening to the speeches knew that perfectly well. This is not going to be about what Labour can deliver. It's going to be about Labour dodging all the bullets when they fail to deliver. I can't remember the number that they've plummeted by in the last few days, but it's got to the stage where the difference between Labour and Tory popularity has suddenly been reduced to something like 4 points. Yep. And that's evident in some of the by-election results. And perhaps a little bit of heart could be taken from last night's result in Perth, where the Alba and SNP votes together come to just under 52% of the poll. Now, that's a good thing to see. The bad side of that is the turnout in that election was 22%. We come back to what we've spoken about so often, voter apathy. Far more many people stayed at home than came out to vote. This is what politicians and particularly activists have got to address. The general population need to be motivated to vote. In the absence of that, we will continue to be governed by politicians who are not fit to look our boots, who have no vision for the future, who are not going to turn around either the UK or Scotland, and we're going to stick here in the awful doldrums that we're in forevermore until there is motivation and hope and mobilisation. Gone should be the days where you listen to the likes of Anna Sarwar and actually believe a damn thing that comes out of his mouth. You only have to look at his business record, his company's business record, ask what his dad did, what his dad's doing now, and ask his life experience, what he has actually delivered, other than standing behind a deck of, I don't know what they were the LPs, do you still get LPs? But doing a wee dance with, what's her name, Emily Thorburn, you know who I mean, Emily Thornbury, getting a big round of applause, going viral, but what did it deliver? Nothing remotely tangible, and that's the Labour Party. Full on promise, empty on delivery.
Yeah, full of self-congratulations. They think they're brilliant, but it's starting to turn, and we're going to come on to the elections and recently. But another thing I got to remind, because you're of the left, Lloyd, the Labour Party, the party of the workers, the party of Attlee and Bevan, etc. And this guy, he thinks that the long-term sick should get out their bed and get to work. We've got to remember who brought us Atos, which was in Glasgow. Remember, it was called Lourdes. The Glaswegians quickly called it Lourdes because you went in disabled and half dead, and you come out cured and fit for work. And they're going to get back to that, bringing in Lourdes and making the sick people go out and work. This is the Labour Party. Now, if it was the Tories, you would go, well, it's the Tories. But this is supposed to be the Workers' Party, Lloyd.
Yeah, sitting listening to what we're all saying here, in some ways, we've fallen for it again, just because you get the Labour Party and you think, well, maybe it'll be a bit better. But God almighty, we need to remember, go back to 1997 with Blair, followed by Brown. You know, there was no great improvement there in any way whatsoever. Do we expect a Labour Party who has a leader who went to private school, has a cosseted life, never really had to concern himself with anything, and I'll bet you he couldn't tell you how much a pint of milk is. But do we expect them to be able to connect in the way that some of the people that you talked about, Roddy, you know, likes of Nye Bevan, the likes of Dennis Canavan, for goodness sake, John McCallion, you know, great Labour Party members, Elaine Smith as well from the Scottish Parliament. These people never lost their principles in any way whatsoever. But these are the people that Starmer has marginalised. It's like, you know, the big giveaway with Starmer this week was when the young laddie got thrown out of the Parliament, out of the conference for a pretty mild heckle, it has to be said. And Starmer turned around and said, oh, yeah, he had a ticket for the 2019 conference.
I've actually got that, Lloyd. If I may, can I play that? Because I'd like to throw it in, because here's the thing. A lot of people watching, I've got to say, I never voted anything but SNP in my life. I was never in any party up until 2020, and then into Alba. I've never voted anything but SNP. A lot of people were in Labour and they get disillusioned. The one thing I noticed recently was a lot of young people who have gone back and they didn't know. But this young lad, he, like so many people who are watching this show, has suddenly realised that he was thrown out, manhandled, and you'll see him getting out of a police van. And the realisation that Labour doesn't do what it says in the tin.
What did you want to say to the Prime Minister?
I hadn't planned on saying anything. It's just when I heard him speak about how he wanted to ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon, just the hypocrisy on how every day we're still sending British bombs and British bullets that are being used in Lebanon and in Gaza right now. And the Prime Minister, he could stop that. He could stop that right now, but he doesn't. And he says that he wants things to stop, but he won't lift a finger to actually stop them.
So you weren't planning on saying anything? You were just moved to say why you were speaking?
No, I was a delegate. I'm a Labour Party member. I hoped I'd be one for life, but I suspect not now. But just what's happened and just the complete failure of the Labour Party and Keir Starmer to address it, it's just completely sickening.
What more specifically do you want from them?
Complete suspension of arms sales to Israel, embargoes, sanctions, whatever it takes to stop this genocide that is currently occurring, not just empty platitudes, to conference halls full of people who support you.
Can I ask what your job is, or are you a student?
I'm a student.
You're a student.
Are you happy with Keir Starmer as Labour leader?
Absolutely not, no. Although it's not just him, it's the party more general and the wider political establishment for not being supportive of taking the action that is required in order to stop this genocide and actually stop the war like they claim they want to do.
Can you tell us what was going through your head as you were sat there, and what sort of was the moment you decided to stand up and start talking?
I was just angry. I mean, at myself, I guess, for not saying anything at the time. But again, like I say, just for him coming out to say that he wanted a ceasefire, but not taking any of the actions that he could, not lifting a finger in order to do it. And I was just angry. And in the end, I decided not to do it. I told speech from Labour.
How many? Sorry, go on.
What did you? I don't know if you heard what Keir Starmer said back at you.
No.
He said you must have a pass from 2019, and they've changed the Labour Party. What do you make of
No,
that?
I joined in 2022 when he was leader. I thought he would be able to do what he said, to be a more moderate force that could win the election and still deliver change. But he hasn't delivered change. We've got the same.
So many people have been down that road, Lloyd.
Yep. Indeed.
Take aside the issue, which was gas, which we made our position very clear. But it's just the general, you know, the boys realise too late it doesn't say what it's in the tin.
Yeah, but I think what would have been even more hurtful for a lot of people, not actually at the conference, but some, you know, at home, was the dismissive way that Starmer dealt with them. It was particularly kind of vile. I felt, you know, he made a virtue of the fact that the BN crowd had turned on this laddie with their pitchforks and their firebrands. And he turned and he said, I think he must have had a pass for the 2019 conference.
Yeah.
We have changed the party. We have changed. So what he was effectively saying was, get out of here, son. We don't want people like you. There is no place in the Labour Party for people of conscience. That's what he said. But then, remember, this is the man who is a self-proclaimed Zionist. And it has become clear over the past year, nearly, to be a self-proclaimed Zionist is to be a self-declared genocide approver.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality. There is no moral high ground for anyone who claims the Zionist ideology. The Zionist ideology is a rejection of all things collective and humane.
It's quite disgusting. Phil, you know of lots of people who have had this journey, that young lad. My heart goes out to him. I had a similar feeling with the SNP when they broke my heart. But there's an awful lot of people already, and we're going to come on to it shortly, some figures and numbers, but a lot of people are waking up to the fact that they're con job. It's a con job.
It is, and I thought the young man was articulate, intelligent, very well spoken, obviously, but accurate and principled. And it's sad that there is no place for this young man in British politics anywhere at the minute, with the exception, hopefully, of Alapa, that sorts a few things out. But there's very few places for people with conscience.
Well, maybe Jeremy Corbyn's party that he's trying to form, maybe that'll be
that's where he belongs. That's the only place right now that you could go if you're of that principle. And Starmer said it himself. It's Corbyn's party that this man, he thought this guy was after, but no, he spoke the truth and he was courageous. I'd love to see things change and people do what it says in the tin for a left-wing party and a right-wing party and a liberal party to have real choice. That would be a wonderful thing. It was called democracy when we used to have it, but now the delusion is sadly long gone. The infiltration of political parties is complete. It's complete in the West, and it's why we're now engaged in a proxy war with one of our neighbours who we should not be warring against, the Russians. Absolutely appalling what's going on there. What's happening in Gaza, disgraceful, again, standing up for... We need. There was a great quote. I've said it before, but there was a great quote. There was one guy, I wish I could remember his name, came out with this quote. The reason that we, the West, are prevalent at the moment, not for long, I would say, with the rise of BRICS, is for our propensity and for organised crime and violence. How much we have managed to organise and be the best at warfare and killing people and taking over countries and asset stripping them. Now these warmongers and these powermongers don't have that option anymore. So they're asset stripping their own. They're actually cannibalising their own countries right now, and that is why Britain's doomed, and it's why we're in serious bother, and why Scotland has got to get away from this absolute mess. Unify and make sure that we look after our own, because nobody else is going to.
Here. I said quite some time ago, and I'll repeat it, the left and right is gone. I believe it's horizontal and vertical. It's them in the top and those at the bottom, and that's the struggle now, not left and right. And in fact, the Councillor Campbell of the SNP confirmed that when he said he was recruited horizontally, if you remember, into the SNP. But that's another story for another day. Eva, you've seen that story. You know a lot of people who were Labour, who were disappointed, disillusioned, and saw the light. You have some empathy for that young man?
I take my hat off to that young man because, as you know, I am not a fan of young folk in politics, simply because they generally tend not to have life experience, knowledge, understanding, and to be able to speak with a degree of ability about where our politics should be heading. I make an exception for this young man. If we could clone him throughout the UK what a much better country this, or much better union this would be. And had we folk like him in our independence movement in numbers, what a better independence movement it would be too, because he understands what he's talking about, he knows what he's talking about, he cares, he speaks with heart and he speaks with knowledge. And that, I think, in a microcosm, explains what's gone wrong with politics in Scotland. Mm-hmm. We've gone from the Labour Party of the 90s that had the young guns in the suits with the mobile phones and the filofaxes, and we replaced them with the SNP guys in the suits with the iPhones and the social media. And where have we got to? We've learned bugger all. We've ended up in a position where we're in this kind of 50-50, not really knowing what we're doing, 10 years of limbo, to put it mildly and politely, and we're stuck. We're just absolutely stuck, not knowing how to get out of a houk. And when folk like us try to explain to the leaders of parties how to try to change it, they don't want to know, because they're all putting party before country. Absolutely. That young man put country and democracy and moral values and humanitarian values above and beyond his own personal ambitions. And it's people like him that we need in the UK and in Scotland. I really hope there's very many more like him coming up through the ranks that are going to have the courage that he's had to stand up for his convictions, and more power to him.
Here, here. I hope Jeremy Corbyn's watching him and he's someone who could take him under his wing. And if I'm not mistaken, how it started was Starmers were making a big thing about how no child in the UK should be left behind or have any trouble. And the young boy shouted out, "What about the Palestinian children?" And they turned on him like a pack of wolves. I mean, God forgive you all, did that. 20, 30,000 children and babies killed, and you don't like when someone reminds you of it? How disgraceful. But here's another, oh, Lloyd, I've lost you. Come back. We forgive you. All is forgiven, Lloyd. Oh, he's back. One of the other things, I've been trying all week. I mean, the one big thing that we're banging on about, in particular, the Labour Party, was GB Energy. It's coming to Aberdeen and there's all these jobs going to come and it's going to reduce your bill. But, millions, zillions, trillions. You'll never have it so good. It's going to be fantastic. Now, I wrote direct to the Labour Party, to the Scottish Labour Party, to individual members of Parliament and members of the Scottish Parliament, and invited them to come on to tell us about this fantastic new organisation, how it was going to, and at what time scale. The fact is, this is Richard Murphy, who very much tongue-in-cheek says, "Great news, I jest, for Aberdeen. It is going to host the new private equity hedge fund called GB Energy that will never generate a thing, supply a single watt of power to anyone." And they applauded Starmer for that in Liverpool. And they're patting themselves in the back and talking about it. But they don't want to talk to the public about it. They don't want to put details out. I doubt anyone will ever come near me.
I think we need to be talking to the Scottish National Party about this, because if you're the government of Scotland, you surely are planning your future economy. So GB Energy must surely have been factored into that, in the same way as the free ports and the special economic zones and the local economic zones. All of those are, one would imagine, the Finance Secretary would be completely on top of, aware of what the cause and effect of these initiatives will be on the future 10, 15-year economy of our country, rather than what benefit it's going to get for Britain. Now, from what little I have heard from the Scottish National Party, they would appear at the moment to be not embracing GB Energy with wholesome praise, but what they're not doing is giving us any critique, and that is giving the impression that they don't know what GB Energy is. Never mind the British government knowing about it. But I think it's absolutely incumbent on politicians in Scotland to explain to us where exactly into the economic mix that is Scotland GB Energy fits, where the closure of Grangemouth fits, where the creation of the free ports fits, and where the local economic zones and the special economic zones fit. Because I would like, for my daughter's sake, to be able to tell her whether or not she will be able to afford a flat when she goes to university, whether or not she will be able to go to university, because all of these things at the moment are unclear. So I genuinely believe, Roddy, that the Labour Party will tell you whatever the Labour Party has its line this week or this minute, right? That's what we'll get from them. That's what we've been getting from Murray, we're getting from Sarwar, we're getting from all of them. But the real people who should be asking the questions on our behalf, we are now having to ask them the questions to get them to ask the questions, because it's incumbent on the Scottish Government, the Scottish National Party, Scottish Government, to explain to the people of this country exactly what the benefits are of GB Energy and how it fits into the mix of a developing Scottish economy.
Yeah, I should say I went to invite Gillian Martin, who's in charge of energy for the Scottish Government. I found out she had blocked me. I've never spoken to the woman, never interacted with her, but she had me blocked. I was obviously on that list that was handed down. So I have put out a plea for some of our viewers and some of my Twitter followers to get in touch with her and say, look, could you come on and give us the Scottish Government's position on GB Energy? Now, Phil, you're our resident expert on energy, oil and gas. So they're not going to generate any electricity or gas or oil. They're not going to supply it at all. So tell me, how can they reduce my bill, Phil?
Well, they won't. They can't, and for various reasons. And on the issue of Gillian Martin, funny enough, when I was organising, set up and managing Yes Aberdeenshire, she was one of the first people I promoted because I found her very able and had real potential, Gillian. But don't know where you've been, Gillian, don't know what you've done since then, but I really don't see an awful lot, and you're not going to do anything here, let's face it. But let's see. The Financial Times, I saw they proudly announced that GB Energy, allegedly the government's clean energy firm, it's going to be based in Aberdeen. So it's going to be in Scotland to appease the jocks, you know. Since you've got 95% oil, 65% of the gas, we've got 2 shovel-ready pumped storage facilities ready to go. You've got most of the minerals. We've got 40% of Europe's wind and wave energy potential. It's just off the scale, Scotland. Well, we better appease the jockos and put this new investment company up in Scotland. What a load of crap. Utter mince, and they're going to Aberdeen as a boost since Aberdeen's fallen in tough times. Why? Because England stole all your money. That's why. And it's basically as the North Sea oil and gas basin declines. What about Rockall Basin? What about West of Shetland? What about all the other basins? You lying dogs. Utter garbage. These people are just lying through their teeth.
But it's a hedge fund, isn't it? It's not an energy company.
Let's go into the reality here. Firstly, GB Energy is a private hedge fund, not a real energy company. This is not an initiative like one I advocated, which is to go beyond the weak effort that Nicola came out when she was just mouthed, basically. She didn't do anything about it. It's not a Scottish Statoil or the Norwegian oil and gas company that's now called Equinor, where every barrel counts, and setting up a sovereign wealth fund for the people and making you one of the richest countries, one of the richest peoples in the world. We're still one of the richest countries. It's getting all stolen. That's the problem. It's all been stolen. Secondly, the green energy will not save you money. Green energy costs you money. It's the reason that bills are 3 and 4 times higher than they should be, because governments give subsidies to companies, and the companies pass those on to the punter. The extra, all the costs you get, all the benefit they get is taken by the corporations and the government. The cost to impose and to give all these subsidies to the energy companies to build these green energy facilities, that all the cost is passed on to the punter through the rates that you are charged, and that's why your prices are. Thirdly, if you're pro-green energy for your principles, first of all, I say you're wrong, but your choice, freedom of choice, it's
You say
becoming
my
more
solar
illusory.
panels are wrong, which I paid for, not the
No,
government.
there are some good initiatives that will help, but the overall strategy is wrong. GB Energy will not serve your interests. They serve the City of London and big investors.
Yeah.
A further asset stripping vehicle. That's what's been placed in Aberdeen.
Yeah. The other thing is, Eva, there's a carbon capture. I've been hearing about it for ages. The logical place would be up north, but it's actually going to go down south. There's a surprise. And the job, I'm told there's 62,500 jobs they expect GB Energy to have, of which probably 61,947 of them are going to be in the square mile of London, because that's what it's a hedge fund. That's exactly what it is. And that's why no Labour man will come on here and talk to me. They won't face me. They won't come in and try and speak about it.
I'm going to go on about this for the rest of my life. I was 6 years old when oil was discovered in the Amoko field in the North Sea in 1969. And I speak about this often. I remember I lived in a caravan in Crieff. I hid behind a couch in Hogmanay when my mum, my dad and other pals were singing Flower of Scotland and talking about the oil bonanza and what oil was going to do for Scotland. They were going to leave their caravans, they were going to have houses, they were going to have Stetsons and diamonds and a land of milk and honey. And what they got instead was, eventually, Thatcher and the total deindustrialization of our country, which continues to today with the closure of the Grangemouth oil refinery. How much more privation and deprivation has to happen to Scotland unnecessarily before the people of Scotland will have the courage and the power and the determination to stop it and to reverse it and to take their own lives and their own destinies into their own hands. And this is where politicians and political activists fail the people, because we don't give them the education and the understanding and the optimism and the belief that we really can make Scotland be a better place to live. You know, folk like us want independence for the sake of independence, because we believe that Scotland is a country and countries should be independent. We believe that Scots are a nation and nations should be self-determining. But not everybody believes like us. Not everybody thinks like us. And an awful lot of folk are vulnerable. They don't have their wherewithal. They worry about where their next payment's coming from. They worry about their income. They worry about their expenditure, whether they're pensioners, single parents with children, our working poor, our folk who deserve so much better than our community and our country and our governments of Scotland and Westminster deliver. There has got to be a way to change this so that the ordinary people of Scotland understand there is a means by which our country can not just be self-determining, but can look after everybody who lives here, who chooses to live here, who's born here, who wants to stay here, or who comes here to make a life, and who is valued because they've got a valuable contribution to make. The United Kingdom's ability to create a Scotland that is a better place has gone. This has never been there. Scotland will flourish as an independent country only if and when the people of Scotland have the courage to make that happen. And that's not going to happen looking at results that we've seen in the last few days, 22% turnout in by-elections, the pitiful performance of Labour members at the United Kingdom Labour Party conference, or the election today of Russell Finlay as the Tory party leader. Scots need far better than what is on offer. I don't know where it's going to come from, but it's going to have to come soon. to make things better than what they currently are.
Yeah. The clock's beginning to beat us. There's a few things I want to get in, Lloyd. And talking of that, we've been talking about it just now, how the Labour Party, you should get a bounce during it's normal to get a bounce during your conference. They're in a honeymoon period. But the latest one coming out, the opinion poll from Britain Elects today, shows that the Labour Party are at 30%. They've been dropped lower before their conference. The Tories are up at 26%, but what the worry for me is the Reform Party is at 18%. But the Labour Party has very quickly lost its shine.
Yeah, the reform thing, I'm finding hard to actually pin down exactly what it is, because it's clear that there's an element of a protest vote in it, particularly when you read some of the analysis of the reform voters and the fact that they seem to be scooping up about 20% of their vote is coming from people under 30. But when those people are spoken to, it's very much they are protesting in their vote. They don't really know the details.
I heard they had an IQ under 30.
I think that's probably true as well. But let's be a bit fair to these young folks. The reform thing, I don't get, because they haven't been under the same scrutiny that anybody else has. And when they do come under scrutiny, then I think it's going to be extremely difficult for them to maintain any continued kind of improvement. But the worst thing of all is what Eva was talking about, is turnout. It's the fact that people are disengaging, and that suits entirely both the British establishment, it suits the Labour Party, it suits the Scottish National, it suits the party structures for people to turn off. Because I think, all four of us have discussed this over the past couple of years. We're in a situation here where politics in Scotland is in managed decline. The Scottish National Party particularly is in a deliberately managed decline, because they've decided that they can afford to take a hit. But they know that certain people will be protected, and you'll tend to find that will be the seats from what used to be the Tory heartland. So John will be fine, some of the others will be fine, but they're prepared to let it go. And I don't understand completely why that is, because that doesn't need to happen. If John were to do the thing which, yet and again, another plea, you need to talk outside of your box, John. You don't have to admit you're wrong. All you have to do is you have to go out and talk to some people who've got a different view, who've got a broader picture. Either that, or we are going to get sucked into, and maybe is this where you want to go, John? We're going to get sucked into a requirement for a coalition government in 2026 if you don't waken up to the fact that there are forces out there that can deliver you over 50% of the vote, because there are people out there who represent that gap between the 34% that your party currently has of the electorate and the 52 to 54% who support independence. You need those people, John. The country needs those people. You need to start speaking, whether you do it publicly or not. You need to start talking to people out with the Holyrood bubble. You have to do this, John. Either that or our country suffers. Now, I know you know, the party is the thing for you, John, but party time is over. If you go into this election with party before country again, then you are consigning the country to another 10 to 15 years of, for want of a better word, depravity. Waken up, John, pick up the phone, talk to someone, please. You have a responsibility.
Here, well said, Lloyd. It is what we need. We're shouting it every week here for unity. And then people will say to me, but you're always attack the SNP. No, I'm telling you facts. I'm telling what they need to do to make it better. Phil, on that, the opinion polls, I say, the two ugly sisters, Labour and Tory, it's closing, and they're on the charge with Farage, the Reform Party. But here in Scotland, these two by-elections, the Perth one, for example, the SNP, the Alba Party got its best ever result on an extremely low turnout, but they got a great result all the same. They got 6%, which is for them marvellous, fantastic from their point of view. The last time by-election, the ISP got 8.5%. So there is some movement in the people who say, well, I can't vote for the SNP, but I believe in independence. There is a movement there. We have to get it all together into one unit. Here's a novel idea. You might like this one, Eve. I don't know if you've thought about it before. A constitutional convention. I'm being radical here, and get all the yes movement together. I can see Eva's impressed. What about you, Phil?
Yeah, it's the only way. It's the only way forward. It's certainly the best way forward that any of us can come up with, and we've been talking about it for a while, and people ought to understand it and its potential. But the this council by-election, an ISP get over 8%. That was Bathgate, and Alba got with a candidate I'm not too sure about, and 6%.
Right, not to be too sure about.
Which is great. I mean, but that's fabulous. You know, there is their awakening. Yes, it's very encouraging. This, and sadly Reform's rise, is a continuation of the collapse of SNP in Scotland and the Tories in England. But sadly, what Lloyd was saying, as long as even one of these shysters who currently run the SNP remain in control, this demise it shall and must continue. And it is for us to wrestle this one proud party away from the shyster that was hold us down. And that the reform you talked about, is there a hope that they, for all their wrongings, for me and for most of Scotland, we don't believe in this kind of politics. Are they the ones to smash this glass ceiling, this two-party system? Well, no, because what's the difference? They're just a wee bit further right than the Tories and the Red Tories. When it comes down to policy, what are you going to get? Nothing. More of the same. Uber austerity, accelerated greed. Although I don't know how. I don't know. I think Labour are doing a damn fine job of accelerating the asset stripping of the UK and the greed. So we need to understand that before we talk of breaking up a two-party state that we currently are in spite of the recent wee uplift by the Lib Dems. If there's no change in policy, then there is no change in party. So I suppose it becomes a three-option state. You get more of the same. Grand theft from the people by the few. Massive asset stripping of what's left of Britain's economy and assets, with Scotland, as ever, as the first prize.
Yeah. Eva, I mean, simplifying it, the SNP vote's collapsing. 8%, let's call it 7% for other independence parties. Surely John Swinney and the hierarchy of the SNP can see, well, if we come to an arrangement and agreement, there's 7 or 8% uplift immediately.
Very plainly, very, very plainly, what Margot MacDonald said in Edinburgh more than a decade ago was about, there's things that you and I will never agree on. And we'll have to remember that after the vote, we've still got to live together in the same country. And we all think about the priorities that we have for our country. But the bottom line is, there is likely to be, in an electoral contest, a majority in favour of Scottish independence. That is likely. We know that from what happened in 2014 and from the growth in support from independence after the referendum was called from 28% to well into the high 40s and beyond. In the real world, if the better together notion could become something that the independence movement adopted, and we had Scotland United, where we spoke from the heart about what we who desire independence actually desire, envision, imagine, and we really want to build. By God, what a country we would make. You think about what it would be like if Alec Neil was in charge of housing, Anne-Marie Ward was fighting the addictions battle, if Lloyd was there, if Phil was there, if Jim Sellers was pitching in, if Kenny McCaskill was doing his bit on energy, if Alec was doing his bit on energy in the economy, all the good folk of our movement, forget about parties and just think about literally what you can do for your country.
Yeah.
Scotland wouldn't be the best wee country in the world. It would just be one of the countries of the world recognised between Saudi Arabia and Senegal, and the saltire would fly no higher than anybody else. But by God, it would fly, and so would our people.
Hear, hear. Well said, Eva. The clock has beaten us as always does, and there's a couple of things I want to squeeze in, and of course I have to do two on this one, and they're given them the amount of time they deserve. Russell Fernley's the new Tory leader. Well, who cares? But I want to give a special mention to Mr. Consistent himself, Murdo Fraser, who entered another election and lost again. He does it every time. Well done, Murdo. You keep up losing, mate. That's what you are, a loser. Keep it going, yeah? The other one is, and it's just a quick one, is Kezia Dugdale and co at they want to have the Secretary of State for Scotland chooses when the people of Scotland can have independence in a referendum. Kezia, stop taking the drugs, love. You know, don't do it, or the bevy, whatever it is. That's crazy. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. A load of nonsense. But what I do on a serious note, there is to be a special commemorative this, Lloyd, this year of Auschwitz, to commemorate its the ending of the Nazi occupation and the freeing of the remaining prisoners. But here's the thing: because of present day politics, the people who actually freed and get rid of the Nazis from Auschwitz, who liberated the camp, the Russians, have been excluded from the commemoration. The Americans and the British and the French, who had nothing to do with the liberation of Auschwitz, are going to be there, and lo and behold, the Germans are going to be represented. Wow. But not the people who actually liberated the camp. Absolutely disgusting, allowing present-day politics to take away from something as important as that.
Absolutely, but it's the values of the world we live in. Russia gets banned from the Olympics, gets banned from the football. Israel can murder 40,000 odd civilians and they still get to play in the Conference League, the Europa League, the Champions League, the World Cup. The hypocrisy here is off the scale. But again, Roddy, I think there's a deeper kind of message here. There's a desire in the West to not remind the generations who were not taught properly about the Second World War. They don't want people reminded of the fact that without the support of the Russian people and the Soviet state, it's debatable whether or not the Second World War would have concluded in the manner that it did.
No, that's a fact, absolute fact. And the clock is beaten. There's a couple of other things I wanted to get in, like the pensioners who are going to sue the UK government and the Scottish government over the winter fuel payment. Good luck to them. If you start a fundraiser, folks, I'll be one of the first ones in the queue to help you pay your legal fees, and I'm sure everybody will join in and help you with that one. And also, I wanted to put up Callum Steele of the Police Federation. And I know you're really, let me squeeze it in for Eva wanting me to do this. I want to put it up and very quickly on it, Eva, because we really have overshot the runway.
Well, it's quite an astonishing use of words by the Chief Constable. I mean, the simplicity of the question that's basically asked is, do you record the sex of sex offenders? And in giving a very long, verbose answer, the Chief Constable ultimately gets to the position of saying yes, which is welcome, I dare say, by everybody, but of course it's a complete contradiction to the position that the service has articulated in the past when it was first answered this question a number of years ago. The fact that, I mean, the service's position on this is a matter of public record. They've responded to freedom of information requests where they've made it very clear in the past that someone who has a transgender identity, if they commit a sex offence, will be recorded against their transgender identity rather than their actual sex, which is entirely at odds with what the Chief Constable is saying today. Now, if the Chief Constable wasn't aware of her own force's position, then that's quite something. But her policy statement, which is basically what it amounts to in her interview today, makes clear that the position that's been articulated in the past no longer stands. It's quite something for a police service to not get the significance of this issue for particularly victims of sexual abuse, but also many campaign groups, and to get its messaging so fundamentally wrong on what should be a very simple, straightforward response. Well, it's quite an astonishing use of words by the Chief Constable.
Oh, hit the button the wrong way. Eva, your comments, and I should just say for anyone that didn't know, this was the fact that the Chief Constable is now saying that people will be charged with their sex, not their gender choice.
Very difficult set of circumstances for the Chief Constable, because she seems not to have known that the policy of Police Scotland until yesterday was that they would allow folk to self-identify. She's now denying that was ever the case, and Callum Steele has obviously proven that she was given the lie to that. This is a very, very good development, particularly thanks to the entire Women Won't Push movement, For Women.Scot, Murray Blackburn Mackenzie, and all the women and their supporters who have been arguing and fighting about this for donkey's years. Their petition remains before the Scottish Parliament, and the petition was about requiring the Police Scotland to explain why they were recording male offenders as female. The question for the Chief Constable, though, is this. She has said that rapists and sex offenders will be recorded as male. What she has to answer is whether all male offenders, regardless of the type of offence, will be recorded as male, because her speech the other day suggested that if the offence was not a sexual offence, male offenders could still self-identify as female and be recorded as such. So we require within Police Scotland and throughout all public life in Scotland to record sex, not gender, regardless of what the process is, because statistics have to be accurate for them to have meaning and for them to be reliable.
Yeah, well said. Let's say, well over the top. Folks, going to go very quickly. Just to remind you, on Wednesday, I have a citizen from Mariupol in the Donbass joining me, who will give you the real story behind how this conflict began, the history of it, the history of the Donbass, the history of Russia, the Soviet Union, going back to Brezhnev days, so you can get the facts that you're not getting in the mainstream media. Join me for that midweek special. Until then, you and yours, please take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.